what we want to do with the chord. And then again, another one on this D. Yeah, but D to A flat is a diminished fit. E flat to B flat is perfect fit. So we could get around it that way. They're in unequal fits. E flat, A flat, G, F, E flat. So all stepwise motion leading to here. Again, I wouldn't want to probably do this whole entire way anyway. Static motion, not again until we get to here. You would just have, again, the best way to decide is what does it sound like. So the very last chord. Maybe the last measure. Right?
It doesn't really sound like an ending.
Well, and it doesn't really end until the next one, or the next beat. Let me scroll up to the downbeats here, the E flat. I don't have that written in. I mean, if, again, we're just thinking outside the box, you want to get creative with it. Maybe you decide, I want to pass in the neighboring tones to go below and 2 to go above. Doesn't sound that bad, doesn't sound all that great though either. I mean, do we have thoughts on that? This were like your chorale project and you're like, I gotta add some neighboring tones in here. I'm just gonna add them all right here on the same chord. Is that something we would want to do? Harder reading.
I was wondering if we could kind of use non-chord tones and split that last beat and revoice the 5 chord into something that would give more of a cadence when going to the 1 chord.
So how would we do that?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, it doesn't like really kind of propel you to the, I mean, technically there's nothing wrong with this. Nothing at all. But we already got to the 5, now we're going slightly away and then back to the 5, and then we get to the 1. It's not really taking us to the 1 in a smooth, organic way. One way could be that I think that you might be thinking about, possibly Carter, is like replace the 5/7 altogether with a 1/6/4 to a 5/7.
The cadential.
Yes. Cadential 6/4, which would mean though we have to change that melody note in the soprano to a G, because A flat is not part of the 1/6/4 chord. But if we did that, I'm not gonna write it all out, I can just play it for you. I think. Oh. And then to our chord. 2, or a 4 to a 5 to a 1. Bach chose, instead of doing like a subdominant here before the 5, to make it all the 5 and add those non-chord tones. So he suspends the E flat over, adds your neighboring tone in the tenor, creates the illusion almost of like a self-dominant happening. You know, again, lots of different options here, but now we kind of see, by reducing it and then adding the non-chord tones back in, you can kind of see the thought process happening a little bit more, I think. If we're gonna do a suspension, where would we wanna look for, how would we wanna put suspensions into, like say our chorale? What are we gonna look for? Not if we're adding them in. That's just for the classification. So we have like our chorale, we already have the chords set, we have our melody, everything's set. Now we're just trying to add some non-chord tones in there. We look for thirds for passing tones. We look for static motion for neighboring tones, which Bach didn't put the neighboring tone in there from the alto. I'm not sure why. He decided that didn't sound good, didn't like the idea of it. How do we do suspensions? Carter, what are we looking for?
Movement by step, like stepwise.
And which direction? Step what?
It would be stepwise down.
Yes, because remember, suspensions go down by step. So right away, Bach could have put the suspension, actually with both the soprano and the alto. We have step down. How would we write this to look like a suspension? I tell you what a lot of students do. Because they write out your chorale, and then again, rather than erasing or doing anything, they'll do that. Is that a suspension? Amelia, why? Is that
So you
not
have
a-
to hold the first note?
Yeah. Here, you're getting to the chord early, right? You're getting there before the chord happens on the downbeat. This whole idea of suspending is to suspend it over into the next chord. So how do we write that for that to happen?
You have to hold the G.
Have to hold the G, which means you have to erase the F. The F can't happen until after the chord happens. The G has to be held through. Now the G is being suspended through into the next chord and then resolve to that. And we would do the same for the E flat. Let's see what that sounds like. Of the two suspensions that we just put here, well, let's label them. So we have a G to an F over a B flat. What would that classification be?
6/5.
6/5. And then the second one is an E flat to a D over the B flat.
4/3.
4 and 3. Okay. Which of the two has more tension and then release? The 4/3. Why is that?
Because the fourth isn't more. It's-
Well, 4 is more dissonant.
Yeah.
3 resolves, right? Stable. What about the 6? Is that a dissonant interval? No. Is the 5th a dissonant interval? No. So that's probably why it sounds kind of nice and pretty. If we take that first one out, you can see that it's gonna just like the F and the E flat being right next to each other, that's gonna create a lot more dissonance here. Bach could have done that. He could have had another suspension over the next chord. Create a suspension chain of suspension. So out of we have a D to a C and an F to an E, and actually A flat to a G. We got lots of options here. Which one will be the more dissonant? Or maybe we have a couple that would be dissonant. So we could go F, hold the F over to the E. That would be what classification?
4/3.
4/3. So F to E over C is 4/3. What about D to C over the C?
2/1. 9/8.
9/8. And then A flat to G over the C.
6/5.
6/5. Out of the three, the 6/5 is the least dissonant to consonant. But both of these would work. A ninth is definitely a dissonant interval compared, and then resolving to an eighth. A 4 is dissonant, that resolves to a 3. So we could, again, how would we write that into the music? Joey, what do you think? We want the 4/3, which is the F to the E. What do we have to do? How do we rewrite it?
Erase the E and F and the E
Erase the E and do what?
but F and the E
Yeah, put an F and an E, eighth note. So the F holds through into the C chord and then resolves to the E a half a beat later. You could just try that one out and see how that sounds. So if we have our first. Yeah, there's that suspension, and then release, resolution. flat, like so, so the D is gonna carry over. So we'd call a chain of suspension when it happens right after the next one. When we're in another. It's getting busy. Like, you know, a lot's happening here. I would say it's getting maybe a little bit too much. If we took the top suspension out, and left the bottom suspension in, or the alto, see what that sounds like. Definitely makes the alto part way more interesting. Cause the alto's getting delayed every time, like on the B2 or B3, the resolution is being delayed. And then we got an 8th note line here, makes it a little bit more interesting. You know, lot options, right? Not saying that one's better than the other, just some different options. Again, Bach chose not to do any suspensions in the first measure. Maybe you didn't want that dissonance right away. Maybe you like the sound of the dissonance and it works for you. Retardation. When does a retardation happen? We haven't seen too many of those yet today, so let's review. What is a retardation?
It's when, it's like a suspension, but you go up.
Right. It's exactly like the suspension. You hold the note over, but instead of going down, you go up. Now, Bach probably wouldn't have used too many retardations. In fact, it's pretty rare in Baroque music, but Mozart and Haydn, classical composers, Beethoven, on through the Romantic era, they used a lot of them. If we were going to put retardation into our chorale here, where would we put it? Anybody got any ideas? What are we looking for? Yeah, we look for a step going up. So, like in our soprano, we have a step going up here. So how would we rewrite it so that we would have a retardation? Or
We raise the 4th beat,
raise the F.
added E, that's an
Yes, so now you create the suspended part, but instead of going down with it, we go up with it. And the resolution happens a half a beat later. See what that sounds like with all the senses. Take out that from the alto. I want to keep my retardation in there. See if that's that sounds a little better. So the soprano is on an E flat, the bass is on a D. But then it resolves up, so you get that tension happening there. Release up. we could add it again, you could delay it, you could delay it once more there. We could add a suspension here. I mean, there's a lot that could be done. Again, it's a matter of taste and not overdoing it. You don't wanna put a non-chord tone in every single place that you have an opportunity to put a non-chord tone, because it might not sound good. I mean, it just comes down to like putting them in and then testing it out, playing it. Or if you're doing this on a, like MuseScore or something where you can hear it as you put it in, that's probably the best way to do it. Just be able to hear it as you start to elaborate on your ornament, your craft.
He said, don't overdo it, that's all we've been doing for the.
Well, exactly, that's all, well, I wanted to show you what happens when you start to overdo it. Like, yeah, it can get really busy, it can start to sound maybe not as desirable, is a nice way to put it. We could put, you've got suspensions here that we could have done too. And I think when you start to overlap, non-chord tones in different parts, that's when it can get a little bit, sketchy. You're gonna wanna test the waters on that. I think most of the time, when you do have them overlap, like here, Bach has two passing tones happening in two different parts. But what's the interval that occurs? You got E flat to G, that's a third. F to A flat, that's a third. G to B flat, that's a third. That's like harmonious, those are consonant intervals. Like when I had the B flat and the C here, and B flat to E flat is a fourth, C to F is a fourth. That's not really a good interval. Fourths aren't really good intervals to have to harmonize. If they're six or thirds, that would sound good. Fourths, fifths, probably gonna be open. Fifths, you end up with parallel motion anyway, or parallel fifths. So you kind of have to use your ear a little bit and look at what's going on around you. All right, let's take a look at this assignment, because we might have to do something like this in our homework. So the directions say, after reviewing the discussion of embellishments, that's basically what we just went over. Decide what one suspension would be best in each of the following excerpts. So we're only gonna put one suspension in for each of the excerpts. Then renotate the suspension and add at least one other embellishment, which could be a passing tone, a neighboring tone, or a retardation. Remember to put parentheses around non-chord tones and label non-chord tones and arpeggiation. So looking at these first two measures, as you look at them, think about where would be a good place, or maybe just where would you put suspensions at all? Where can we put suspensions? Alright,
The soprano between the 5 chord and the 6 chord.
okay, so we have a step down happening here from this G to this F. That could be a spot for a suspension. Where else could we put a suspension? Is there any other spots? Carter,
The alto between the
Oh.
first and second chord.
the F and the E right there, right? There's another spot for a suspension. So out of the two, the directions say only pick one. Which one would be the best one to pick? Remember, we want to think which one has a more dissonant interval first, resolving to a least, or to a consonant. If we look at this first one, F to E, what bass note are we having this occur over, first of all? Over the C. So the F is gonna hold into the C and then resolve down to the E. So what's the interval from C to F? 4 and resolving to 3. Right, what about this? We have G and F, and what bass note is that gonna be occurring over, the C or the D? Over the D, so the G will hold over to the F and then resolve. What's the distance from D to G?
Oh, yeah.
And then 3. So now we get a pickle, right? Well, they're both 4-3. Any questions?
I had a kind of, yeah. If we did the suspension in the alto line, would that also create a neighboring tone? Because it would go down and then back up to the F. Could we be bringing the F from?
I will, let me address that in a second. Alright, let me get to this first. I see what you're asking. Alright, let's listen to them. So the first one, we put the suspension over the C chord, over the 5 chord, and I only play those 2 parts. Alright, over the soprano and the bass. Which one? Let's see. Now if I add in the soprano to this. That's with the suspension in the alto. If I add the soprano in and the alto with the suspension and the soprano. Both pretty crunchy. Any thoughts?
The suspension of the alto, so many Fs in the alto line, just it sounds like it's almost droning. I didn't like the sound as much.
So you're thinking add the suspension to the soprano instead? Okay. That's a good observation. Any other thoughts, Carter?
Would adding the suspension in the soprano make it a little awkward because the soprano and alto are reaching the same note at a different time? Or like, because the alto will already be on the F and then the soprano will move down. And then that's also a really big jump from
the same jump will still be there.
Yeah.
I guess that's not really the issue, but I can see but it is creating a little bit more tension then, I guess, if the alto gets to the note and then the soprano gets there late. As opposed to the first one. They're both, like if I put the suspension here, you got G and F resolving down a half step to the E. Here we have G and F resolving to the same note, F. Yeah, I don't know if there's an actual right or wrong. I think the more tension is gonna be between this suspension than this, and the only reason why I say that is because we have, well, there's two reasons. We have F, and then resolving to E. This is a half step, as opposed to G resolving to F, which is a whole step. Half step being, in my mind, a little bit more dissonant than a whole step. I mean, it's kind of really very close. Also, this resolves to a full chord, and this resolves only to 2 notes out of the chord, an incomplete triad. So I feel like this is a more harmonious way to resolve than the 2 notes. But really, if we're going by strictly our numbers, 4-3, 4-3, this is a interesting one. I'd like to see what the authors put for their answer. They have it occurring here over the C. But I think in this case, really, I think either answer would be acceptable. Be best in each. I think it's either or, at least for this one. Some of them are a little bit more cut and dry. This one though, I think you could have probably argued either way. Let's go with the way we have it now then. Alright, so the other part of the directions though say, add in some other non-chord tones. At least one. So where are some places where we can add some non-chord tones? Hold on. You want to put suspension? 3. Okay. Andrea, where were you thinking? The 6 and the 4, do a neighboring on which voice?
The alto.
On the alto. So F, static motion, we put a neighboring tone in there. You go above or you go below. You know, not a preference. Above. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this alto part a quarter note and then up to a G. Soprano, how would we notate that? Probably that would look kind of weird. So it would look like that, I think, would be the way we'd write it. isn't the way you approach the neighbor tone.
Right.
The problem with it is that the altos go above the soprano at that point, and it kind of confuses what's happening with the melody.
Yeah,
If we go below it, that would resolve that problem.
okay.
Jane, you have a question?
Does it consider it being a road crossing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would definitely say that this is a voice crossing that's happening, so putting let's see what happens if we put the neighbor tone below. Oops, my bad. Definitely crunchy. But technically it can work. I don't know if that's something Bach would do. Having that really harsh distance of a half step between the two. Yeah.
What about a passive tone between those two frets?
Which voice?
Bass.
In the bass, yeah, that's a good place to put a passing tone. So, because our half notes are our beat notes, now our non-chord tones end up being quarter notes, as opposed to, we're doing all quarter note, harmony. So yes, we have a passing tone here, which is what I think the book did, the authors.
You also put a passing tone at the end of the bass line.
You put one there too, right?
Do all of them, I would probably do all of them together, but.
Well, yeah, no, I know, we're just trying to find different places we can put it.
Can you put one between the 5 and the 6 chord? Or is that
In what part?
still a bass?
Oh, half step?
In general, is that a place that you could put one?
No, because it's a stepwise motion and not a skip. So all of these were
Oh,
skips.
yeah, okay. It looks farther
C to
apart.
D is a, now, technically you could put a half step in between, and now you're getting into chromatic, half, like, notes, which is what we're avoiding right now.
You could do it
I'm
as
curious to
well.
see what that sounds like. I like the sound of it, but it's some, I guess if you really wanted to do that. And this would be another passing zone. Passing zone.
It's so crazy busy now.
What else do we do? Do we have any step up? I don't think anything that steps up, do we? Other than what we created with our, passing tone. Step up would give us a retardation, but we don't have that option. Now, the book, I noticed, the authors, again, this is just one example, or another thing that you could do for the soprano. They had the soprano doing this, while the alto, hold on for the what do we call that? chord tones. It's a 6 chord in the key of F. So the chord tones are D, F, and A. We have the D in the bass, the F in the alto, F in the soprano. Originally was just held through. Then they add an A.
Soprano outlines a chord. Right, and that's one of the rules about voice reading.
Yeah, so this is not any of our non-chord tones that we talked about. It's not a passing tone, it's not a neighboring tone, it's not a suspension, it's not a retardation, because A is a chord tone. So all they did, they arpeggiated the D chord. And you have that option as well to do that. If you want to add some motion, but maybe don't want to use a non-chord tone, you can use a chord tone instead and arpeggiate. I don't know how that's going to sound against our passing tone here, but take that one out. So. It could, well, you give it a try. I'm not saying no to anything right now, but some things might make your life harder. It might be easier not to do it, but you never know. Let's see. The next one is only this measure here, F sharp minor. Alright, so chords are given to us. So what we want to look for are, where can we add a suspension? Because we have to add at least one suspension. See where we can add a suspension. Yeah, in the bass where?
Beats 1 and 2 and 3, 4.
Right here.
And 3 and 4 also.
Is that a step?
No, you can't have.
I'm only looking for a step down. And I don't think we have any other spots where it's a step down. So this would be the only spot. It's happening in the bass. All right. So how do we rewrite that so it's correct?
Erase the E sharp.
What's that?
Erase the E sharp and hold the F over that.
Yes, good. This is, yes, we're gonna hold the F across to the new beat, and then release to the E sharp after. So you can put a tie in, you don't have to put a tie in. So now the F is the non-chord tone. It's a suspension. How do we label this suspension? Anybody remember that one? Because all the suspensions we label is above the bass. What's the interval above the bass? Now it's the bass itself.
Don't we choose the interval that's most dissonant?
Yeah. So if we start with this one, F to C is what? 5, and it resolves to E to C. 5 to 6. How about F to G? Second, resolving to E to G. Third. So it is 5 to 6, or 2 to 3. The one we're looking for is the first number, the one that's more dissonant. Which one is more dissonant, 5 or 2? Yeah, 2. So 2 to 3 is a better way to classify this. So, 2, 3, suspension. All right, so now we have our suspension in there. What other types of non-chord tones? We got lots of options. Could we put a passing tone in there? All right, Joey, where can we put a passing tone?
In the soprano beats, well, yeah, beats 3 and 4.
Between beats 3 and 4. Yep, you put a G in there. How would we rewrite it?
8 notes.
You could do that. Now, what if I did this? Would that be wrong? Is it still a passing tone?
It would depend what comes in the next measure.
Oh, I forgot to answer your original, but I can go back to that in a minute. Just remind me, you had a question about the first one. It's still, G sharp doesn't belong to this D chord, right? Because it's occurring over the D chord, now you have to assess it. If the D chord did include a G sharp, for whatever reason, maybe it was a 2 chord instead, then the G sharp wouldn't be a non-chord tone anymore. Say this was a 2, 6, and, well, 6, 5, right? Yeah. And the note was originally this. So D and F sharp belong to this chord, this is G sharp, D, we're missing a few other notes. Look for this example, it'll work fine. D and F sharp are in this chord, right? So everything's fine, we put the G sharp over over beat 3. This chord is a 1 chord, F sharp, A, C sharp. This G sharp is a passing tone, it's a non-chord tone, right? But if I did, say I wrote it wrong, or wrote it differently, I put the G sharp over second chord. Can I still call that a passing tone? If the chord is a 2 chord, that includes G sharp. No, right? Now it's a chord tone. But the chord that we had wasn't that chord, it was a 6 chord, which is D, F sharp, and A. G sharp is not part of this chord, but the F sharp is, so this does become a non-chord tone, and it's a passing tone. The only difference between the G sharp being on beat 3 as opposed to beat 4, is now it becomes an accented passing tone because the dissonance is right on the beat, as opposed to an unaccented passing tone where the dissonance was off of the beat.
Isn't it kind of acting like a suspension to an extent?
Kind of, but you're not really suspending from the previous
Right.
chord, but you are placing the dissonance right on the downbeat, which is what suspensions do. So I'll play it both ways. I'll play it the way it's written right now with the dissonance on the downbeat. So now with our suspension, this. You get that tension release right on the downbeat. If I put the G sharp off the beat instead, now it's over the F sharp chord. It's still a non-chord tone and it's still considered a passing tone, but it changes the sound quite a bit. Oops. Right? The resolution comes right out on the downbeat as opposed to there's not a right or wrong here. It's just what way do you like better, you know, in your own preference. Question?
If it were written with the G sharp on the downbeat, the way you
Yeah.
had it before,
Yeah.
and we were asked to do the Roman numeral analysis,
Uh-huh.
is the fourth beat
Yeah. Well,
2 diminished inverted, or is it a 4, or a 6 rather?
all right. So it's a little bit tricky with two voices, but what you're looking at is D. Let's say it's treble clef D and G sharp, and that be some kind of chord. I guess you could maybe think of it as a 2 chord without the third.
GBD? right?
Yeah. Or is it D and F sharp, which kind of makes a little bit more, I mean, you have the third and the root in there, so that would be a little bit, I think, a stronger. It would also depend on what the next chord is. That would give you a clue, because whether it's a 4 chord or a 2 chord going to wherever you're going next. But I think because the D and the F sharp are both chord tones, the root and the third, I think it would be safer to say 6 chord rather than a 2 chord. Plus, when we heard it, where does the resolve come? Here or here? The second one, right? So this would be our chord. And this would be a non-chord tone resolving. So analyzing the G sharp as a passing tone to the F sharp, when you hear it, it makes sense that it's a non-chord tone resolving, or this is dissonant, this is consonant. And so that's our chord. Yeah, so there's our passing tone. Again, went into a little bit more detail than we probably needed. Here's another opportunity for a passing tone, because it's a skip of a third. Now the question is, this is in minor. Do we make the E sharp or do we make the E natural? It's sharp here. So do we include the sharp there?
No.
Why not?
Because then you'd have an augmented interval going down.
Yeah, if we have E sharp to D natural, that would be an augmented second. Plus, we're going away from Do, so we're going down the scale, like, our melodic minor. We can use the natural E instead. Now, again, does it sound good? I don't know until we play it. Yeah, I suppose it. Here's the lower E. Here's the raised E.
Doesn't it have to be?
What's that?
Doesn't it need to be the E natural too, because that's what makes, otherwise it's not a non-chord tone? If it's E sharp, then it's the leading tone, which is part of the chord.
F sharp, A, C sharp, E is not a chord tone either way. Because we're dealing with triads,
Right.
F sharp, A, C sharp. So either way, not a chord tone, but, so we're gonna call it passive chord. We have two notes right next to each other, or static motion. Great place for neighboring tone. Now, would I put a neighboring tone above the suspension? I don't know. Does it sound bad? Probably. We'll see. Maybe it'll sound good. I think it's preference. I probably wouldn't overdo it like that, but I don't know, for the sake of seeing what can be done. We do have some stepwise motion going up. Can we add a retardation there? Certainly. We wanna overdo it like this? Probably not. How do I put a retardation in? Say if I wanna go from beat 1 to beat 2. What do I need to do? Carter?
You would erase are you referring to the soprano?
Yeah, soprano,
So you would erase the G.
okay?
You would put in an eighth note F going into an eighth note G.
Alright. So, it's tying over, which note is the retardation at?
As in the non-chord tone,
Yeah.
it would be the F.
Now we have a lot happening on B2, don't we? Again, I'm not promising that's gonna sound good. Couldn't sound worse. Or, let's try this. We have stepwise motion between B2 and B3 in the soprano. Let's put the retardation between B3 then instead. So, erase the A, tie in there. Yeah, now I think we're just getting crazy with it all. Alright.
Do you have any homework? Sorry, it's 11:05.
Really?
Yeah, I have
Well,
work, so I just want to make
yeah,
sure I don't
no,
forget any
yeah,
homework.
we don't. And we get carried away with all these non-chord All right, so yeah, homework is going to be, take the next page out of your book. Page 12, or chapter 12. Yeah, page 94. This is basically what I'm doing right now. Same type of directions. Decide which one suspension would be best. Then notate that with the suspension, add at least one other embellishment. This is page 94. Letter B. Just it's 1 through 4 there. It looks exactly like that, but just think
Nope,
of
you
it.
gotta go around. You gotta go around. Okay? Nope, back up.
All right, and I have work to pass back. You may want to turn your work in, but if it's from the workbook, well, you need to hold on to it so that unless you made a copy of it. Sorry for holding you guys over. I figured it away.